It's a great question. There's a lot of advice that I want to give, but to give it to one piece, I would say just do it. If you have an inkling of starting a business or being an entrepreneur, um, we can fall into this sort of paralysis analysis where we read and read and read. We watch YouTube and TikTok and Instagram Reels all day long, and we get all this head knowledge that really doesn't really live in our head because we haven't utilized it. We think we own that knowledge, but in truth, if we were to go practice it, we probably don't. And we live in this space where we want to take action and start a business and become an entrepreneur, but we don't. And so I would say if you're serious at all about it and you want to do it and it's like deep to your core, you have to take that first step. You know,
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, a serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Andrew Denton. And Andrew started high school as an A student, did a lot of honor classes, graduated in 3 years, went off to college and found out college was a little bit harder than high school. It was a bit more challenging and didn't necessarily apply himself as well as he could have, but nonetheless continued forward, got married, worked a couple dead-end jobs and wanted to do something different, but wasn't sure what that would look like. So he'd originally left school, but went back to look into being a doctor, started a master's program, did get, I think, on probation or got probationally accepted because of his original stint in college, but made it through the master's program in 2 years. After getting the master's, after getting the master's, was figuring out how we would make an income, took the MCAT, didn't get into medical school, figured out what he wanted, or while he was figuring out what he wanted to do, circled back to a business idea with a friend he wanted to work with. The friend did some med tech startup stuff, and it was an idea that they shelved, and then shifted gears to something else, which is what they're doing today. And Andrew will provide us more details. And with that much as introduction, welcome on the podcast, Andrew.
Thanks for having me, Devin. Yeah,
absolutely.
Just to color in a little bit context, growing up, I wasn't very successful. I was very successful in school. As you said, a straight A student, went to college, kind of hit a wall and wasn't successful. Wish I'd applied myself some more than I had, but you live and you learn, and sometimes you pay the consequence for it. But
just to dive into that just a little bit, and I think that there's that shock, I went to a smaller high school, did great, and I put an effort. I mean, it wasn't like I just had to do no work, but you get into college and I'm like, hey, everybody is smart here. Like everybody was top of their class, and they did well, and it's a much different thing. And yet I think that, a lot of times you go into there and you figure, okay, it's going to be the same as high school, just continuation, and going to move on, and it will just be the same setup, and I won't have to overly exert myself. And yet it sounds like that led you to maybe a little bit of getting hit in the face and having to adjust a bit. Is that about right?
Yeah, I mean, like to put it in some clearer terms, like I would sleep in class in high school and like wake up 5 minutes before the exam, take the exam, and ace it. I don't say that to brag. It's just I was blessed growing up, and so when I went to college, that behavior did not translate very well. The level up between high school and college was a bit much than I was expecting. And so, you have to actually put the work in college. It's not as easy as high school. And as it should be for obvious reasons. But, for me, because things had come so easy for me growing up, that connection didn't quite make that. Didn't happen fast enough. So when I went back and got my master's to sort of rectify my college behavior, I worked a full-time job. I worked a full-time internship. I did school full-time.
And one question, because I think between that, so you're ended up, if I not putting words in your mouth, dropped out of college or got kicked out or something along those lines for a period of time. And
I graduated.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. but it took me 5.5 years to do
Uh,
so, and I didn't get a good GPA.
all right.
Um,
Fair enough. I didn't mean to accuse you of dropping out of college, and here you put in all the work to
oh
get the
no, no,
degree.
no! It would, it would fit the typical entrepreneur story, right? I think I was just too
Well,
stubborn to give up.
there you go. So you did that, and then you it took a little bit longer than anticipated, but made it through. And I think you also worked some odd jobs and got married during
Yeah,
that time, or right
yeah,
after.
pretty much. I graduated college, got married pretty quickly afterwards, and then entered the workforce. Worked as a pharmacy technician for many years at different pharmacies, and realized that there's not really upward mobility in that field for me unless you go leave being a technician and pursue like going back to school and getting a doctor of pharmacology to become a pharmacist, or sort of enter the admin side. And
Hmm.
neither of those really seemed what I want to do, or they also didn't seem like career paths that I'd be effective at. Um, and so, but I didn't know that. I was like, well, I'm gonna go back to school though and rectify my previous behavior. And so I got my master's. I got a 4.0 after I graduated, after being put on probation the moment I stepped on campus, because that was the only way they were going to let me on.
Hmm.
Um, but it was good because it really it made me take it. I was already taking it seriously in my head, but like once they sort of put additional like, hey, you can't screw up, otherwise you're out of here, and so that sort of lit the fire.
Kind of gives you that a little bit of added incentive where, hey,
Yeah,
I don't have any more room to screw up, and this is my
yeah,
one last shot.
exactly. And so during that process, I learned a lot about, kind of who I am and kind of what I'm capable of, and realize that sometimes the walls that you're confronted with life aren't really walls at all. They're just like roadblocks or speed bumps, really. To reframe the analogy, I think the roadblocks that we think are in life are really not roadblocks, they're just speed bumps.
Yeah.
And if you treat a speed bump like a roadblock, then you're doing yourself a disservice. You're doing your potential a disservice because, in the case of my life, like I was very smart growing up, hit a speed bump in college and thought, like that must be the limit of my potential. But had I just applied myself a bit more, had I built up some discipline and built some positive habits, I would have been very successful in college, because I had a natural gifting for academics. But because it didn't come as easy to me as I was used to, I kind of just threw up my hands and said, well, you know, it's not worth it, which is definitely the wrong mentality. I'm not making excuses for it at all. I think that's a part of my life that I definitely regret. But it taught me a lot about, um, you know, who I am and what I could be and what I should do. And so when I actually achieved my goals of getting a good grades in my master's program and actually starting a business, you know, there's a lot more grit and persistence in me than I'd realized, and a lot more, um, the desire to take on big responsibility. I discovered that about myself, and so now it's been a blessing to have sort of struggled with that, because otherwise I would never have known.
No, makes sense. And sometimes you get to learn learn lessons the easy way, and other times you get to learn them the hard way. But either way, you get to learn them. And so
Yeah.
it takes different paths. But that definitely makes sense, and sounds like a good part of the journey. So you're coming out of the master's degree. You did a great academically. You learned your lesson, and I think you were kind of considering going to medical school. That was kind of the path you thought about, but it didn't
I
work out.
was. Yeah, so I had had a 4.0 master's degree. Took my MCAT, had a great MCAT score. I would say arguably pretty solid extracurriculars. Worked internships. I shot out doctors, and so I had founded multiple organizations on my college campus that I led, and those organizations still exist today, which I'm very grateful for that the legacy exists. But so I applied to all these different med schools, and the door kept getting shut. And so I was like, okay, well, there's something going on here, and I'm not exactly sure the why of it, but I do believe that it was a course correction for my life, and one I'm grateful for. So even though I didn't go be a doctor like I had originally planned, I would never have started a business had I pursued that. And so because I didn't become a doctor, I was reminded of an idea that I had about a decade ago, combining technology with the medical, like healthcare. And just to really give a brief overview, it was designed around an application to use computer vision to diagnose brain traumas and brain disorders, using like an iPhone camera or an Android. And so we created a prototype. It was pretty successful on demonstrating the technology, but we built the business right around the time that COVID had sort of happened, and a lot of the funding had dried up because everyone went to like all the businesses stopped, and so investors sort of became close to their dollars, for obvious reasons, and so it was tough for me to get funding for FDA approval, and so I decided to ultimately shelve that business. I do plan at some point in the future to pick it back up because I really do believe in it, and I think that the fact that we're able to build a prototype that demonstrates the technology is pretty impactful. But through that process, I learned a lot of lessons about, from being a first-time founder, having no business knowledge or acumen and having to read a lot, study a lot, learn from mentors, watch YouTube videos, read books. I mean, the amount of information overload was pretty insane. You learn a lot during a master's program for applied neuroscience, but I almost say you learn way more trying to start a business in terms of just the volume of what needs to be attended to. And yeah, but it was definitely a experience I wouldn't trade for.
No, that's awesome. So now you're coming out. You said, okay, was going to go to med school. That was the plan. Didn't work out. Kind of got into, or you'd had a friend had the idea you were going to pursue. I was with some med tech startup, ended up shelving that. I think because you said you couldn't get FDA funding or couldn't get funding to
for
get
FDA
through the
approval.
FDA process. Yeah, to go through that, which is long, arduous, expensive, and or certainly not fun. And so now, if I remember, as we talked a little bit before the podcast, you ended up shifting a bit or kind of going in a new direction. Is that right?
Yeah. So during the tail end of that startup, the medtech company, we were hiring for different positions, different roles at the business, and frustratingly, the talent wasn't coming in aligned. And so it was, I always felt there's a better way to do it than the traditional resume. And so I had this idea of combining, or creating a new format to intake talent and sort of demonstrate for that talent to demonstrate their skills to the business. And it's what I came up with was essentially Bumble for Jobs. And I reached out to a contact of mine in the industry who's a med search recruiter, or executive search recruiter in the med tech space, excuse me. And I said, hey man, I think I got this great idea for what will amount to Bumble for Jobs. Candidates will create a profile, companies will create a job post, and we'll use AI to match the two. And then once they match, using a swipe functionality, if once they match, we'll automatically schedule an interview for them. And that way, we save time, we save cost, and we also are accurately able to demonstrate a candidate's value to the company. And so, it took him about a few weeks to sort of wrap his head around the idea and really get to see if it had legs. But once he recognized it and saw within himself that, yeah, this has legs, he really just sunk his teeth in it. And so, my partner David, he's now my partner, and then we brought on a third co-founder in around the summer, I think, of last year, and have been building the business effectively since like August. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Sounds like it's been a fun trajectory, a great future ahead now. Or as you're in the kind of raising and product launch mode, kind of where do you see because I think, if I were to say the next 6 to 12 months, that's kind of hopefully have a bit more raise the product launch and start to getting maybe a bit of income in and kind of iterate on the product. But walk us through kind of, if you're looking to the future a bit, 6 to 12 months out, where do you kind of see things headed?
So 6 to 12 months out, I mean, in 6 months, we definitely like to be commercially available to a few niche markets, primarily the tech space. We're looking to supply talent in the like sales, design, marketing, data analytics, and software engineering verticals. And then, more long-term, 12 months out, we want to sort of integrate with the healthcare field and the defense sector. That might be like closer to 18 months to get both of those fully integrated to the, on our platform. But, and then we want to raise a seed round in probably Q1, maybe Q2 of 2024. And that's really dependent on how this first commercialization kind of rolls out. We want to get product market fit and determine what that actually looks like for us and how our customers are responding to the application, what changes need to be made. Really getting all that feedback is really important to make sure that we're setting our foundation up for the future in a meaningful way.
No, sounds awesome. Sounds like a lot of exciting times to come. It's always kind of that nervous, excited. Hey, we're going to be launching soon. Hopefully, people will pay us. Hopefully, it will go well, but we won't know until we get there and start to push it out in the marketplace. So definitely wish you the uttermost success as you're hitting a lot of those milestones or coming up on those. So with
Well, I
that, now
appreciate that.
now as we're kind of hitting towards the present day and even looking a bit into the future of the journey, it's always a great time to transition to the two questions I always like to ask towards the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what'd you learn from it?
The worst business decision I ever made was signing up for an accelerator out of Austin, Texas. I'm not going to name names because I'm not in the business of sort of, you know, doing that. But ultimately, they were a ineffective organization. They had scammed other people out of a decent chunk of money, not just myself, and just an all around like awful experience. I went to them looking for excuse me, expertise and knowledge and information and sort of a peek into kind of how the tech space works in a way that I didn't know. And so trying to find some advisory mentorship from them was what they offered. But the education that they disseminated was very lackluster. I could find all the information off of a Google search, essentially, in terms of the quality of the information available that they deployed, which is very unfortunate. And then they'd also promised to offer introductions to people in their cohort, to investors, and relevant people in the industry. And they promised X amount of investors per month for the duration of the cohort, and I saw not even a fraction of that, which was very, very disappointing because at this time was full in on the business at Glia Health the first time around. I really put my heart and soul into it. I try to make it, I was like, I'm going to get, you get out what you put in. And so that was kind of my mentality towards the program. So I attended the events, did the workshops, followed the modules, reached out to the mentors, and the value deployed back was just extremely low, which was very disappointing. I'll have to say, though, it was a great learning experience because it taught me about what to look for when evaluating an accelerator or a venture partner, for that matter. How to qualify a organization's skill set and their ability to deploy meaningful value to your business. And it taught me that not everyone is going to treat you with the respect that you'd like to be treated, even if you're doing things on the up and up. And so there was it was a mess, but still grateful for
and it's interesting because I mean I've seen it on both sides. I've seen some accelerators that are awesome, that are every bit worth the investment,
of course.
And other times it's like ones where people that say, well, I can help you along, and they have no idea what they're doing anything more than you. They promise the world, and yet you get nothing in return. And kind of as much as it sounds like, oh, well, I should be able to tell the difference, it's not always, especially if you're new into business, you're doing startups, you're just getting things figured out yourself. Learning and knowing what to look for isn't always readily apparent until you've gone through that and gained that experience. And so certainly a easy mistake to make, but a great one to learn from and setting things up for the future. Second question. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, after I'd gone through that, at the tail end of it, I got pretty bitter and sour towards accelerators in general. And I was like, yeah, these are pieces of crap. They're scams. They don't really help at all. But I've since walked back to the complete opposite side, where I think that they are valuable. It really depends on the ones that you're working with, the ones you're partnering with. I mean, there's Techstars, there's YC, there's a whole other host of incubators and accelerators that are actually very valuable to startup founders, particularly first-time founders. And so, my experience with this one accelerator, I'm not making a blanket statement on all accelerators. I think there's like with anything in life, it's a mixed bag, right? You can have good people and bad people, and good organizations and bad organizations. And so, do your due diligence, right? And but ultimately, I do think there's more good than there are
Yep.
bad or misaligned. So
Yeah, and just my one last parting thought on that, then we'll jump to my second question, which is, I think that, the thing you have to be careful with is startups or whatever, even if they're really good ones and they provide a lot of opportunity, it's not going to, they're not running the business for you, nor are they going to be the ones that are excited, the motivated, the ones that are going to continue to push along. They may give you some good introductions, some good tools, some good guidance if you find the right one, but the business still ends up or falling on you to be the or
yep.
to build the business, to run it, and to engage with it. And so I think that sometimes people don't realize that going in, and you get to learn that the hard way, even if you get a good accelerator.
Yeah,
So I think,
you have to have accountability and recognize that you are the founder. It's your job, and it's your responsibility whether your business sinks or swims. And so no one's going to come with a magic bullet that's going to automatically solve all your problems,
yep.
right? If you've got fundraising issues and you go to an accelerator to fix that, and you're the real problem with that issue, then the accelerator is not going to fix that, right? It's like putting a band-aid on a bullet wound. At some point, you got to go and address the real problem, whether it's your own process, it's your own mannerisms, your own personality, your own ability to engage with new people, right? I think all of those things can be coached to a level, but at some point you have to take a hard look at yourself and recognize, okay, where am I failing, and what failures are under my responsibility that are totally separate from this accelerator's uh, ability to help.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's definitely some great piece of advice. Now we're going to jump to the second question, which is, so now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
It's a great question. There's a lot of advice that I want to give, but to give it to one piece, I would say just do it. If you have an inkling of starting a business or being an entrepreneur, we can fall into this sort of paralysis analysis where we read and read and read. We watch YouTube and TikTok and Instagram Reels all day long, and we get all this head knowledge that really doesn't really live in our head because we haven't utilized it. We think we own that knowledge, but in truth, if we were to go practice it, we probably don't. And we live in this space where we want to take action and start a business and become an entrepreneur, but we don't. And so I would say if you're serious at all about it and you want to do it and it's like deep to your core, you have to take that first step. Go file your LLC, go find a co-founder, get it back of the napkin, spread out the equity between you and him, figure out what or her, right, whatever ends up being, and just do it. And eventually you'll start to figure out, okay, this is what I need to do next. This is what needs to come after this. Because if you sort of sit in this wait for the perfect moment when you'll have all the money or you'll have all the time or you'll have all the knowledge or you'll have the best network, right? You're never going to stop because none of those things are ever going to be where you want them to be or where you need them to be for your business to be successful. You're always going to be swimming against the tide, and sometimes you'll get a life jacket, sometimes you'll get a life raft, sometimes you'll get a little like life buoy, right? Sometimes it'll just be you swimming with none of those support structures, but you still got to find a way to make it to shore. And you can continue to tread water, or you can just say, no, I'm gonna start swimming forward. And that's like the main advice I would give. Don't be stagnant. Get to moving.
No, I think that's a great piece of advice. And there's never a perfect time to start a business, and you can always come up with excuses as to why you need to wait or why you should hold off or why something needs to be in place now. Sometimes it is a case. If you have 3 kids and you have zero savings, zero money, and you're living paycheck to paycheck, jumping over to starting a new business while having no ability to support your family probably isn't the best way. It doesn't mean you could start that as a side hustle. Doesn't mean you can't start that weekends, nights. You can't start saving towards it and you can't start working towards it. So I think that I love that, I think there's always things that you can say there isn't a perfect time, and some of those are justified. It doesn't mean there isn't a way that you can't get started on it and get going as you continue to address some of those issues.
Yeah, of course. It's certainly context dependent, but what I mean by, get to move and always take action, right? That action can be as simple as opening up a Word document on your computer and saying, okay, I don't have the money now today. I don't have the time I've got a family, I've got 3 children, I've got, whatever it is, right? You can list those things out.
Yep.
And then, okay, well, here, what are steps that I can do to mitigate some of these risks, right? I can um, get better control of my time management. I can allocate an hour a day, every other day, every once a week to sort of start laying the groundwork for the future. I can, start to acquire more high impact skills, to acquire a better job, to free up more of my time, and while earning more money to put money towards savings, right? So there's always steps you can take that sort of push you towards the goal of becoming free from your job, or starting an entrepreneurial venture. So recognizing who you are, having radical self accountability, and saying, okay, this is who I am. This is the situation that I've been dealt in life through my own actions or through just the nature of the environment that I'm in. Because I think there is a little bit of both, right? There's sometimes your own responsibility, but there is also external factors that kind of help you, right? You know, I'm an American. I'm born in America. I was born in Texas, born in Dallas. I moved 20 times before I was 18 years old, right? Those are all things that were out of my control. But how do I leverage that? How do I weave that in my own life story? How do I learn from those things to effectively move forward in life? Because you can look at your situation and the choices you've made um, as negatives, and say, well, this is sucks, and this is who I am, and this is like nothing I can do, or you can pick up the paddle and start rowing, to keep the analogy. So
Absolutely. No, I think that's definitely a great piece of advice and a great takeaway. So, well, now as we do wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
yeah, so probably 2 ways. You can reach me at Andrew at joinprosper.ai. That's my email address. Or you can find us at joinprosper.ai, joinprosper.ai. So, and there's a contact form on our website that you can fill out too, if that's more comfortable.
Awesome. Well, I encourage people to reach out, support a great business, certainly check them out. And if nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again, Andrew, for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you, the listeners who are out there, if you want to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So let's go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners. Make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And on that note, if you ever need help with your startups or your small businesses, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always happy to help. Well, thank you again, Andrew, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you very much, Devin. I appreciate you having me here.